So in giving a campaign traction, you also want to understand that you are not always the main mic on the stage. What we had to do to give constant influence of the campaign and constant vibe on the campaign where people were saying, okay, they're liking the hype. What we do is there was ownership, but that ownership was also strategic and structured. We're working with community-based organizations to say, listen, this is the campaign we're running at a national level. What are your issues? Let's do this together. And I remember part of our social media plan was to incorporate the CBOs. Some of them are known to many, and to them it was a pivoting opportunity to come and work with Zimcode and be profiled at the same stage with a campaign that had been so successful. But also for Zimcode, it was important to go and work with a CBO that's operating in a local environment to then say we can also then give influence to the people that are audience to this CBO. So we did that, but we also looked at what about closed channel access? What people can we reach in the niche? Let's go and look at people that are in the business sector and say, we've got this how far question around these issues that affect your businesses. How do we sit together, do an indaba, and still raise the questions as business and still ask the highest office in the land that these are the questions that we have. Let's talk to mining. Let's talk to thought leaders in different sectors. So we did that. And the idea is always to galvanize our reach to spheres of influence that we may not be able to influence, but other people that are part of our networks can do. We also had to mobilize ambassadors. And our idea was any good advertiser will tell you that nothing beats word of mouth. So if you can galvanize people who can talk to their sisters, to their brothers, to their peers about what is happening, about their sentiment around a campaign, you get much more traction. But then also there are problems with influencers. And that's what, for us, it was a lesson. Sometimes you can deal with influencers and at the hype of the moment, they agree to run with the campaign. And midway through the campaign, they develop competing interests. Sometimes this is influenced by other factors that we may not know, but someone will then call you and say, I'm no longer interested in running with this campaign. We actually need to deal with something like that, where we've got influencers who are on board and all of a sudden they're not on board. We had to deal with such a thing even when we launched Alpha 2.0, where certain influencers all of a sudden are not interested in doing it because maybe competing interests have prevailed and an opportunity for them to maybe shut up has appeared and they've taken it. And what we've done is you should anticipate when you work with influencers that you're working with people change their minds. Your whole campaign, in as much as it will get fuel from influencers, cannot be based on influencers. Remember, the steps can change, but the objectives do not change. So if we can't steer the discourse in such a step, we change our steps and we still push the same narrative and we still push the same objectives.
Maybe there are civil society organizations that are big enough and actually run campaign departments that can actually do this work because maybe they have dedicated teams that are working on campaigns, they have all the expertise to run campaigns. But if you do not have, and you are a small organization like the one that I was coming from, I had big ideas in terms of building agency, but I had also looked at the capacity within my team in terms of priming a big and national campaign that actually had the potential to spill over to the region because we also run regional projects. I had to look at who could support us in this work. And it took thinking through the campaign support that we needed. And it brought me to the idea that we needed an agency to help us. And this agency had to have proven technical expertise that we needed in terms of running campaigns. It had to have access to certain networks. I think we were privileged in terms of we had an agency that had run various campaigns for private sector, political parties, so for civil society organizations as well. So the technical expertise and the access to networks that we got, I think was very important and is something to consider, but you also have then to consider the issue of the budget. But I believe you can get agencies that also mean to consult for good. And for me, in terms of choosing to work with the agency that we chose to, was based on the fact that I'd seen that they say, you know, in the tagline that they're consulting for good. And I had to bring that if you do this and we're working together, you're consulting for good, and you cannot charge us the private sector rates, as an example. And that really assisted us in a big way. The other thing is to create room to focus on internal issues around the campaign successes and leave the external stuff to the agency. So at the organizational level, we had to deal with the internal issues that we had to deal with, the admin issues, we had to deal with the content issues, the research issues. But when it came to, say, working with the advertising and marketing agency, their grouping, their association, that had to be done by them. When it came to accessing certain stakeholders within our outdoor, within our social media platforms, we had to leave it to the agency that had that expertise. So we focused really on the internal, you know, campaign issues that we had to deal with and the successes thereof. They were monitoring our social media platforms. They were working on the data issues, because there was a lot of big data analysis that had to be done as well, which we didn't have capacity in. So you need to consider the issue of working with agencies. It also gave us some kind of insider perspectives. I think I've spoken about the issue of networks. So social capital is very important. What I learned in terms of running this campaign with the agency was that we built so much social capital across the divide, from the private sector, the public sector, and the civil society organizations. And for me, a campaign that just speaks to one sector of the society is not going to get you there. So you need the social capital that is across the divide. And with this campaign, we managed to harness social capital that is unusual, that we were not going to be able to harness from the public sector itself. We got insider information. From the private sector, we got insider information. From the civil society perspective, we got insider information. And that was based on the fact that we had a neutral kind of player in between on certain aspects of the campaign that we were dealing with. So I would say that consider working with agencies. I think we've even spoken about corporate social responsibility. Maybe if you don't have a budget, you can talk to an agency and talk about it from the perspective of corporate social responsibility and being charged as a non-profit making organization. But I think it is very important, and for me, it is what also sustained our campaign, because we continued to think, you know, on our toes, because this was someone who was not in our sector, but having that third eye, that sixth sense as well, as we continued to implement our campaign.